So moving on from that, I then did so I had, in a night of rage, I ripped, everything went static. Pseudo static IP addresses and what have you. And then I bit the bullet as well. Like, I really can't remember what kind of phase it was or what time it was, but I moved the whole thing across to YAML. So my everything, automations and all of the UI as well, it's all YAML. And I think this was it's sort of interesting. I went to this because I was looking for, at the time at work, we had to learn DevOps, because it was all the rage everybody was talking about. And I was thinking, what can I do here? And I suddenly realized I can flip the whole thing on and then I can do DevOps on it. So all of my configuration is in a repository. It's actually on an Azure private repo, because at the time GitHub didn't have private repos and there was no way I was putting my repo in public because it's awful. It's probably full of keys and all sorts.
Yeah.
But you could have a private repo there. So my development switch, then I use Visual Studio Code, and so I develop locally, if you like, and then I commit. And I've got a DevOps agent, so you can have these agents. So there's an agent on the Pi that's running Home Assistant, and it basically then it sees the commit and then copies it and then does a check. So the equivalent of when you're going to, check the validity of the YAML that you've done, it does one of those. Assuming it passes, it then does a HA restart and restarts the Home Assistant. So I've got I think I have about 3,000 commits, something like that, on my Home Assistant sort of development tree, if you like. But it was a really good way of actually learning sort of DevOps, because it was you learn by the mistakes. Yeah. You kind of you make mistakes, and then you have to learn how to unpick mistakes and yada yada yada. And now I wouldn't be without it, because you just make mistakes when you're doing stuff, and I can sort of roll them back. Not that I ever do; I just go and fix them. But I have this history now of my sort of development of my own Home Assistant, and it's backed up as well.
So does that mean every commit you do is like rebooting Home Assistant to like reload automations or reload your latest YAML?
I knew you were going to pick this up. So yes is the answer, and I know in the end. So I do a commit, okay, and it does a whole Home Assistant reboot, and that gives me the time for me to reflect on the wisdom of my commits, really, or the lack of wisdom of commits. So and it can be a bit painful times, because I've probably made a typo. You'll see quite a few. If you look at my commit history, there's quite a few typos. That's where I've just done something stupid. And that's cost me a few minutes in terms of the process of doing the whole reboot. And I know you could do it quicker, particularly when you're doing the UI development in Lovelace. But my Lovelace is pretty static now. I don't do much to it, because I tried to make Home Assistant something that you don't use the UI for, if you like. So mostly I hope stuff just happens without actually happening. So for me personally, it works really, really well, and I'm sort of comfortable with it. And I learned some, useful skills, if you like, from my career at the time. And if anybody else needs to get into DevOps and into Home Assistant, it's a really good way of learning it.
Mm-hmm. Have you thought about taking it to the level where you can detect, okay, in this commit, I only updated an automation, so instead of restarting Home Assistant, I'll just reload automations in Home Assistant to save the reboot
I've thought about that, Phil. Yeah, I was waiting for you to write that bit and post it up so I can copy
it. Well, in all honesty, depending on what you're doing, if you're just triggering webhooks, right? Just say instead of running the restart, run the automation restart rather than the Home Assistant.
100%. I mean, it's even a bit, when you look at my tree, so everything's in directories. So I've got all the automations, scripts, Lovelace. So it would be pretty easy to actually work out whether I've made, say, a Lovelace only change and then just fire. I don't know. I can't remember. So basically the DevOps agent gets access to, if you like, the HA core shell terminal. So I don't know if you can, from the command line in HA core, if you like, just do the sort of whatever the reload Lovelace thing is. I don't know whether I've got access to that.
I think you might be able to even just do it. I don't know how you have your config set up, but you might be able to do it based on file modified, right? Like, so again, if, for example, if all of your automations are in automation.yaml, then
I can catch that bit for sure. I just don't know whether I've got access to only reload, the automations or Lovelace or whatever.
Well, the Visual Studio Code add-on for Home Assistant. I'm sorry, we're paying into a bit of a tangent here, but the Visual Studio Code add-on for Home Assistant allows you to reload those certain bits through the UI itself. So that must be accessing the Home Assistant API. So if you could get a long-lived access token into your DevOps engine, you could probably just fire off a curl request to Home Assistant to say, okay, only automation was changed here. Now fire off this to the API to reload just automations. That would probably be your best way around it.
Okay, I'll put it on my list of things to do. And that's one I thought of, but it never actually made the list.
Yeah.
How big is that list, just out of curiosity?
Does
it get shorter or does it always get longer?
Well, it never ends. Let's put it that way. It goes through phases of being short and long. But to be fair, I've been at this years now, and I am getting to the end of. At least I'm getting to the end of. I need to run a bit of hardware here to do something, or I need to run a cable. I would say I am at the end, I'm nearly at the end of that. That's when you sort of get onto the this is a stretch goal kind of thing.